otherwise. Congressman Ted Lieu is a Democrat of California. He sits on the Judiciary Committee, attended the hearing virtually. Fred Gutenberg is a gun safety advocate. His 14-year-old daughter, Jamie, was one of the children murdered at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, on Valentine's Day of 2018. It's good to have you both here. Congressman Lieu, that was really quite it was a markup, not a hearing. And it was heated, and it was emotional. You really got to see both sides of the gun debate, such as they are in America. What did you think of it?
Thank you, Chris, for your question. Let me first say that as a parent of two sons, I cannot imagine the unspeakable pain that the families in Uvalde are going through. And my heart also grieves for the families in Tulsa, as well as in Buffalo, and also to you, Fred, for your loss. When you look at this hearing, it's very clear that the Republicans are simply parroting NRA talking points. Democrats are putting people above politics, and we passed today from the House Judiciary Committee a pretty significant gun reform bill that's going to increase to 21 the age at which you can purchase a semi-automatic rifle. It's going to ban high-capacity magazines, put in self-storage requirements, and also have new federal offenses for straw purchasers and gun trafficking, as well as some other provisions. So we are, as President Biden said, doing something.
There was a moment, Fred, I wanted to get your reaction to in the hearing today that I just keep thinking about. Because, again, there's a bunch of arguments people make about guns. There's some interesting legal arguments with the origins of the Second Amendment. And then there's just like this relationship certain people, tens of millions of people, have to the object, to the culture of it, that, you know, people have hobbies. Like, there's lots of people getting into painting little figurines or collecting watches or, you know, whatever. People can do whatever they want with their hobbies. But I was just on display today from Greg Stubbe of Florida. It was I found kind of a weird combination of kind of menace and like cringy pathos to it, like showing off his guns. I want to play a little bit for you.
Right here in front of me, I have a Sig Sauer P226. Comes with a 21-round magazine. Here's a Sig Sauer 320. Here's a gun I carry every single day. This is a XL Sig Sauer P365.
I hope the gun is not loaded.
I'm at my house. I can do whatever I want with my guns.
You know, I watched that, Fred, and I want to be like, okay, cool. That's neat, man. Like, you got some big feelings there, buddy. What was your reaction to that?
First, I hope as many Americans as possible watched as much of this as possible today because, you know, Congressman Ted Lieu and your colleagues, you were amazing today standing up for families and children and just our basic right to be safe from gun violence. But then there was Stubbe and his colleagues. He's mentally deficient. And honestly, the members of the Judiciary Committee who he is with on the Republican side, they really seemed as a group to be mentally deficient and more interested in selling guns. It is bizarre beyond measure, but I have nothing that I can say about what he did that can possibly make any kind of sense other than the fact that he is truly a mentally deficient human being. And I just hope Americans watch as much of today as possible because we did see democracy at work. We did see, you showed Madeline Dean, Congresswoman Madeline Dean, who I spoke with last week as well, who has really just been torn up by this violence. And we saw her emotion today. But we saw the Democrats simply fight for the ability to make sense of this gun violence and to do something about it. And we better get this right. If not, President Biden was right tonight. This will be the election issue of our time in November.
You know, Congressman, one of the things that drives me pretty bonkers about this debate is that I don't feel there's a lot of honesty in the position from the people on the other side, because I do think there's an honest case to make on their side. And it basically goes like this. It was a case that a lot of people actually honestly made about COVID. We were talking about COVID restrictions. And a lot of people on the right said, like, yeah, I don't care that much if a lot of people die because I don't want to do these things you're telling me to do. That's the trade-off. And that's the honest argument, it strikes me, is here. for Republicans to say, like, yeah, more people will die of guns in this country if you follow our policy, because we think that's an important trade-off. But you never actually get anyone coming out and owning that. They did own it sometimes in the COVID debate, to sort of a shocking degree. But I never see them owning it in the gun context.
That's a very interesting point, Chris. I have a slightly different take, which is I believe that many of them have the following view, which is that if there were more guns, we would be safer.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think that's a crazy view. I don't think it's correct, but I think they honestly hold that view, which means it's really hard to come to a common ground and to negotiate if they come from a fundamentally different position of having more guns makes us safer. So I want anyone watching this show to understand that you are not powerless in this debate. There is a nationwide election happening in less than 6 months. You can elect people who have a different view, that not having a lot more guns makes us safer. We have less guns will make us safer. And you can elect candidates that have that view. And so people should understand they can work on campaigns, they can volunteer, they can vote this November. You know,
Fred, there was a specific policy item mentioned in the president's speech, which has been one that I've thought about a lot. I talked about it with Senator Blumenthal. There's no universe right now in which you get 10 Republican senators to join in it, but he talked about the liability shield. And it's something I've talked to survivors of gun violence and family members of victims of gun violence about as well. So I just want to play what he said about that and get your reaction. Sure. Take a listen.
They're the only industry in this country that has that kind of immunity. Imagine if the tobacco industry had been immune from being sued, where we'd be today. The gun industry special protections are outrageous. It must end.
It's striking, you know, like everything from a teddy bear to a crib to a kid's crayon to, I mean, you know, if a kid injures themselves with it or as a result of it, like, they can expect to be sued. And it does seem to me like it would make a big difference.
It would make a tremendous difference. In fact, if you were to ask me what is the single most important thing we can do to change the reality of guns in America, it would be to repeal PLCAA. In fact, just so you know, I have an active lawsuit against the gun manufacturer. Now, before I can ever get to my federal claim, I have to get through an onerous state law that's even worse. But I'm going to keep trying, because there is nothing more important than, to me, nothing, than the ability to get the CEOs of these companies under oath and on the stand, just like we did in tobacco. Let the CEOs tell the families across this country why they decided to produce these weapons in the numbers that they did, that then required them to market them to children. And don't tell me they don't market them to children, because we all saw the ads from Texas last week. I can show you the ads from Smith & Wesson that the killer of my daughter was paying attention to. And so, Congressman Lieu, just so you know, what would be my lawsuit has been filed as a claim with the Federal Trade Commission. I would love it for all of the Democrats to get together and take what we now know and call these CEOs in front of Congress to tell America why they overproduce these weapons in such large quantities without any mechanisms for safety, that we have the gun violence death rate that we do. And if we force that, we'll get change.
Yeah, and just as a final thought here, I mean, it's important for people, because so much of this feels familiar and recurring. You know, gun sales and gun manufacturing have gone up significantly in the last 3 years. 2020 was an inflection point. Gun violence has. So there is a trend here that is going in the wrong direction, even though this is a long-standing, enduring problem. It has gotten worse in the last few years. Congressman Ted Lieu, Fred Guttenberg, thank you, gentlemen, both.
Thank you.